Lindy Linn. I'm the Visitor Services and Museum Store Manager here at Gari Melchers Home and Studio. I take care of our Visitor Center, which also acts as Stafford County's Visitor Center. We welcome our guests here. We have a great selection of gifts, and everything we have ties to the Melchers lifestyle or the site in some way.
We operate and maintain Gari Melchers Home and Studio as a public trust. And that's a responsibility that extends to all of our visitors, to all of the students at the university and others who access our resources, and really to the Melchers themselves. It's a promise that we fulfill by ensuring that this site and everything in it are maintained as that public resource that Corinne Melchers especially thought was very important. We're responsible for about 27 acres of grounds. We have 11 different buildings, most of them historic. And on top of it all, we are a National Historic Landmark. So that puts an extra added responsibility on what we do here to ensure the Gari Melchers Home and Studio is preserved and maintained.
I'm Jody Wilkes, and I'm the director of the grounds here at Gari Melchers Home and Studio. So part of my job is to make sure that the gardens are maintained in a historic fashion. The gardens were actually redone in 1994 by the Garden Club of Virginia to bring it back to the original footprint. That is part of my job, is to make sure that we keep that maintained to the Garden Club of Virginia's standards.
Gari Melchers died in 1932. At her death in 1955, his widow Corinne Melchers left this property as well as a large collection of Melchers artwork to the Commonwealth of Virginia, stipulating that it be maintained as a public resource, and we have done that ever since. So we not only tell the Melchers story here, we also tell the story of the Ficklin family, large enslaved populations, and many others who contributed to the stories that make up Gari Melchers Home and Studio.
What I love about our site is really the depth of our collection, because you can follow the evolution of a painting from the very first little sketch that appears on the back of an envelope to, oil studies, and then to the final framed painting. I think it tells you a lot about the artistic process of Gari Melchers. It's just a fun way to learn more about the creative process.
It's probably hard for me or anyone else to say what my favorite part of the collection is. And I really think it's something that everyone should decide for themselves by coming and visiting Gari Melchers Home and Studio. Discover your own favorites that way. That being said, I do really like this painting done in 1887 by Melchers called In Holland. And it's one that he worked on over a number of years and made a number of changes to. He has produced it this way with the windmill in the background. He had variations when he didn't have the windmill there. What I like about this one is not only shows the traditional Dutch farm life that he was such a great recorder of, but I like the unspoken interplay between the two young ladies. There's something going on between them. Just the attitudes, the expressions he caught tells me that there's a story behind just what you see on the surface. And I think that's true in a lot of great artists. I think it's true in a lot of Melchers' work. You can see what's there on the surface, but you can also try to determine what's behind the obvious.
What I love is that we are regularly making fans. It's almost weekly we have someone come back from tour and say, I had no idea about Gari Melchers. How have I not known about this painter? And it's not just fans of art or fans of Gari, it's fans of our site. So maybe we have someone come to our Cars and Coffee cruise-in and they go, I didn't realize that there were trails to hike. I want to come back with my dog and enjoy the grounds. Or we have a child who starts off taking preschool palette classes and ends up taking art classes in high school, college, becoming an art major. We're making those fans of nature, those fans of art, and especially, most importantly, those fans of Gari.
So my emphasis has always been on creating programming for underserved members of the community. Preschool Palette is our art program for children ages 2 to 5, and I've been designing and teaching that class for 15 years now. I've recently developed a new program. It's called Picturing New Connections, and that is a program for people with memory loss and their caregivers. And so we provide a safe space to explore and engage with art.
This painting called The Choir Master, it's one of the early works that really started to get him international notice. The focus is on this little girl right there. To me, your eye is immediately drawn to her. What's going on in her mind? Is she communicating with God? Is she thinking about her future? Is she trying to simply impress the choir master? Maybe it's all those things, or maybe it's something else. This is one of the works that most often invite comparisons of Gari Melchers to Norman Rockwell, someone else who was really wonderful at capturing everyday situations with everyday people and then turning them into something extraordinary.
My favorite part of this entire property is just you experience something different every time. So when I step into the home, if it's my day to open open the museum or close, I always yell out, "Good morning, Corinne. Good morning, Gary." You just feel as though you're coming into their home, that they are still here. And even as you're walking the grounds, you're remembering that gift of Corinne, that she wanted our community to come here, find an oasis here, find a retreat here, just as her and Gary did. Come here and enjoy it. Come here and experience it. And that's my favorite thing. It's just that feeling, that ambiance, that relaxation you have when you're here at Gari Melchers Home and Studio.
The significance of the Melchers Memorial Roses is they were planted by my predecessor, Beata Jensen, and they correspond with the birth years and the death years of Gary and Corinne. It's the year that the roses came out in the trade and were available to the public. From left to right, you have Heiderlosen, which came out in 1932. That was the year of Gary's death. Next to that is Madame Joseph Schwartz. That came out in 1880. That's the year of Corinne's birth. Next to that is Dr. Bruyere. That came out in 1860. That's the year of Gary's birth. And Dortmund is on the far right, and that came out in 1955. And that's the year of Corinne's death.
Gari Melchers started out as a painter, studying very formally in Germany at first. He was very much a realist artist, working in a darker palette, showing his subjects often of ordinary life. And we see that in the studio portion of our galleries. This is a studio where Gary worked. He was willing to try different things, paint different subjects, and that's part of what makes him interesting as an artist. And you can see two examples right here. One is a much darker painting from his time in Europe, and then below it he's now gone to a much lighter range of colors, so really trying to capture that sense that he's looking at this view from far away. By the 1920s we see Gary back in the United States primarily. Again, this is a time when he's experimenting with different subjects related to where he lived. He had a studio in Bryant Park. This painting right here is one he painted in that studio, and we can see a scene outside the window of the buildings of New York. Painting's title is Snow, which is not necessarily the first thing you notice, because there's this very vividly cloaked figure that fills the foreground space. But I think it's a really wonderful example of him painting a figure, letting us imagine what her thoughts are, what she's looking at. We see almost a blending of the darker colors from his early years and these really vivid, bright shades of orange throughout this painting.
One of the favorite parts of the garden is actually what we call the summer house. Mrs. Melchers made a trip to Mount Vernon, and she saw something very similar there. It's not an exact replica, but she remarked in a letter to, I believe, her mother, saying, "I mean to have one." And shortly thereafter, the gazebo was built here. It has fantastic views of the Rappahannock River. At one point in time, the Melchers actually had dinner parties in there. You could fit a round table in there that would seat 8 people. The windows at that time opened so they would get amazing breezes coming in off of the Rappahannock River. When you see the view from the gazebo, you can understand it's part of the reason why the Melchers bought this property, was just for those fantastic views of the river.
So an important part of what we do at Gari Melchers Home and Studio is to pay attention to when all aspects of our collection need care, and that's particularly important for the art collection. One thing that people notice when they come to Gari Melchers Home and Studio is the wonderful frames on many of his paintings. Gary enjoyed buying frames. We even have a lot of empty frames. We don't know for sure if there were even paintings in them. He was even inclined to buy a frame that maybe wasn't perfect and embellish it himself, often for a painting he already had in mind. This painting came back, or I should say the frame came back from a conservator about a year ago. And when the painting went back in the frame, it just brought the painting to life. All of a sudden, these beautiful colors in the background, the blues and the purples, just started to glow. So taking this frame that complements all of the earth tones and then surrounding it, it just really brought the depth and the highlights of this painting together. So both aspects are very important to us, that we keep an eye on what the canvases look like, that we also pay attention to when our frames could use some care as well.
So here at Gari Melchers, we try to host a variety of events that engage our community. So on top of having field trips and classes for both children and adults, we also have a number of events that are just open invites to the community to come and be on our site. 2 great examples are our Cars and Coffee. So second Saturdays in the summer months, we host a meetup just to kind of bring out whatever car you have, come hang out in the parking lot, have a cup of coffee. The site is open for the visitor center and for the grounds to be walked during that time as well. Similarly, we have once a month a plein air day where we invite artists to come work on the grounds, paint. Artists are technically welcome to come and work on our grounds any day we're open, but it's a day that we've created to invite people to come and gather and share and expect others to be here.
Well, Gari Melchers engages with the community in a plethora of ways. We have events here throughout the year, special occasions such as weddings, birthday celebrations, anniversaries, business meetings, just anything that you can think of celebrating an occasion we have here at Gari Melchers Home and Studio. This beautiful space is used for all types of events. The beautiful thing about this room is that it is a garden within a garden. Every corner of this room is very beautiful and has a different view. And as you can see, the space will accommodate almost anything you can imagine with regard to decoration. What is created in these spaces are a lifetime of memories, and there's so many people who come back and share photos with us, and we know that it's very personal to them. So we love it here, and we love the experience we have from our clients.
The big thing I just want people to know is we're here and we're open, and we're a space for you to use any day that we're open. You can come hike the trails, sit in the gardens, paint, read. It's a site that is for our community, not just for these planned events or for planned touring, but just to be maybe that third space you need, a place to sit and relax and get a little bit of a break from the hubbub of the town.